Welcome. My name is Dave, and if you are a student about to go to university or currently at university, we have got something in store for you. We're going to be thinking about what it looks like to be a Christian in your university sports clubs and teams, and particularly in this time together, thinking about what it looks like to go to university as a fresher and live for Jesus as well as compete within your university sports clubs. I got two people with me who are going to share their experiences. Joe, you studied at physics at Durham University and played rugby during your time there. And Ree studied sport and exercise science at Cardiff Met and was involved in the athletics club, specifically doing long distance running and cross country. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to hearing more of what your experience was like going to uni, as well as then being a Christian in your sports club at your university. Joe, kick us off. What were your feelings like before going to Durham as a Christian, as a keen rugby player? Before you went, how were you feeling?
I was excited. I don't think I was really that nervous for some reason. Um, I just thought class opportunity to get into more sport. I wasn't 100% sure that I'd do rugby when I went to uni. I thought I might try a few others out, but ended up playing rugby and was like, yeah, really excited to be doing high level sport or higher level sport and get to know a load more people. Yeah, I was quite excited.
Great. Ree, what about you? How did you feel?
Yeah, like Joe, I was just excited to be in an environment where, so the university I was at, sport is kind of the norm. So you're studying it as well as playing it. So for me, that was such a change from what I was coming from just sixth form. So to be in an environment where everyone was doing sport every single day, all the facilities were on campus, I was just really excited, nervous for what that would look like. But excited to get some good quality facilities, some good quality coaching, and for the academic staff to also be very much understanding of that and understanding the importance of sport and not having to worry about that necessarily being a pressure on my studies. Going into university, that was a great encourager and comfort to have. So yeah.
Yeah, great. Joe, lots of people will get different advice before going to university, particularly then from a Christian perspective, maybe from church or from friends. Did you get any advice in particular about going to university as a Christian and a Christian sports person?
Yeah, bits and bobs. I was fortunate to have an elder brother who's Christian and a few older guys in my youth group at church who are Christians. One of whom was a CIS group leader, actually, and he kind of recommended getting stuck in with sport, getting stuck in with CIS. And similarly, my dad was really helpful. We had a look at a few churches before, just online, just before heading up. And I think that was the main kind of bit of advice as a Christian was get stuck into a church quite soon. Try not to jump about churches for too long. Pick a few, have a look, and then just get stuck in and get on with living as a Christian. I think was one of the things that I was told.
Yeah. Great. We'll come a little bit later on to things like how do you pick a church and how do you get involved in different groups. But let's now go to those first couple of weeks. See if you can cast your mind back to what it was like packing your bags, packing the car, driving over to your university, and particularly then the first few days and maybe the first week or two. Ree, what was that like for you? You went to Cardiff Met, a university close to my heart, is where I study, it's where I'm from. What were those first few weeks really like?
Oh, it is so weird to think back to it because it feels so long ago, but it was kind of a bit of a whirlwind. But at a time, like the first maybe 6 weeks of just figuring out what doing sport was like at such quite a high level, as well as then doing all your studying. And I think I just found it wasn't stressful as such. It was just a new way of living because it's so different from your like sixth form, college sort of education if you've been in that. And so, but I felt very supportive, supported by like the lecturers and like the academic staff at Cardiff Met, and then also from coaches. And I think also what was really encouraging is that you're obviously in halls, and most of my flatmates, we were all doing sport as well. So it wasn't like I was the only person doing sport in my flat. Like all of us were doing sport to different levels of different sports, but there is this common like consensus, if you like, that it's the norm here, and that's just such an amazing environment to be in, where like sport is just sort of everywhere and quite consuming. But what was amazing is that you could really show people that you live slightly differently as a Christian in those first 6 weeks, just by going to church on a Sunday, was just a different thing that people hadn't maybe seen before. So yeah, that was how the first 6 weeks were like.
And did you get any grief for being a Christian in that kind of first week or two, getting into halls, when the first time maybe you said you were off to church, and you kind of slowly let people know that was what you did?
Yeah, not necessarily grief, just maybe surprise. And yeah, I think people necessarily hadn't really seen maybe someone who's done sport go to church before. I don't know, not grief, but it was definitely not the norm. And at Cardiff Met, we're a small university, so I didn't actually know any Christians either for a long time in my first year. And so I did feel quite like I was on my own, but I knew that I wasn't alone. God was with me. But it was really cool to just be like, yeah, I'm going to church, and I'm not I'm not training on Sundays. I made that decision to do that. So that was, stepping out and doing something different. But yeah.
Great. Joe, what about you? What were your first few weeks like at Durham?
Yeah, they're a bit of a roller coaster, not gonna lie. I think I actually found my first few weeks quite hard. I hadn't been to pre-season rugby training. I went along to trials, got into the teams for rugby, and didn't really know what I was doing, like where I was. And I think I just generally felt like that about most things. I was a bit lost, is what it felt like. But like Rhys said, I think it was a real comfort knowing then like God was 100% with me, and I think I was kind of grappling with feeling that a lot. But yeah, like I found it hard, but there were also really great things. There are a few Christians who I knew of, who I could keep in touch with, and also some older Christians in the rugby club, which I really benefited from, just chatting to them, getting to know how they'd kind of navigated things a bit. That was helpful.
Stick on that for a moment. How did you find then that kind of first couple of weeks within the rugby club, particularly maybe around socials, welcome drinks, as they're now unofficially called?
Yeah.
But the pressures that maybe people would assume are going to come within a sports club, rugby particularly is a bit like that. How did you find staying true to what you believed?
Yeah, I think it was tough. Like it was tough. I think the thing I was thinking about earlier when I was thinking about this is it's kind of like a culture shock. Like people talk about culture shock when you go overseas or different places, but actually there's this whole big culture of weird stuff that goes on in a rugby club that it just takes time to get used to. So I found it hard. I was just like, I don't really know anyone here. I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing. And so my actual kind of initial response was to actually stop going to socials most of the time. And by the time I got to my second year, I really regretted that. It meant I didn't know guys in my year nearly as well as some of the other guys did. But that was what my response was at the time. Because I was like, I remember walking down, there's this road in Durham that is like littered with pubs, and and walking down the street and seeing one guy punch his fist straight through a window, and I was like, gosh, what is going on? Yeah, I was just a bit dazed and a bit, yeah.
Well, you live to tell the tale. At least he didn't punch you.
Yeah, exactly.
I know it's good. You're both painting what is probably a fair reflection, yeah, of going to university. It's freedom. There's people can make their own choices. There's loads and loads of opportunity. That's both great, as well as then some challenging things that will come your way. But what I'm hearing from you both is you really wanted to get stuck into sport. You also wanted to identify yourselves as Christians and be unashamed of that. But that does have its challenges, particularly within some of the specific cultures. I guess another thing for Christians to think about when they do go to university is kind of what they can get involved in from a Christian perspective. We've mentioned church already, and then also there's different Christian groups, societies, and there's loads on offer. There's lots that Christians can do. Christians are often called the busiest of people because of that. How did you both find joining societies and church? Maybe we'll separate them. Ree, how did you find kind of getting involved in the different societies and maybe some of the Christian societies? What did you get involved with?
Yeah, because when I started, I was doing triathlon training, and it was quite intense. It was full on, and our CU is quite a small CU, and we are separated over 2 campuses, and often they'd meet at the campus I wasn't at. So actually, I quickly made the decision to join CIS rather than CU because I couldn't do CU because I was training, and
let's just clarify for a moment, Ree. CU being the Christian Union, which is run by UCCF, and then CIS being the Christians in Sport Group.
Yeah, sorry.
These code words, look.
Yeah, sorry. So joined Christians in Sport, which we'll go into, but I was initially introduced to through going to church in Cardiff. And so that was hard because at the beginning there is, like you said, so many opportunities, and you feel like you should be going to all these Christian events to get really stuck in and find your community. But I also want to do sport. And so I made it a priority to do Christians in Sport and get stuck into church and doing that because I knew those were the things I could commit to alongside my academic studies. So tried to not get too overwhelmed with all the opportunities. I think I probably just got busier as the years went on, but initially as a fresher, just you can't do everything, especially if you're doing a lot of sport, a lot of training, you will just burn out. But so I just committed to doing CIS because I could do it on a Wednesday morning and I could go do church. So those are what the things I committed to doing.
Great. Joe, I know you were involved in the Christian Union and the Christians in Sport group at Durham, but what about church? You mentioned earlier you got a bit of advice on kind of finding the right church. You looked up a few places. How did you find the actual process then of going to church and making a decision? Any advice you can give?
Yeah, I think, basically try and have a think about what you want in a church is what I'd say in terms of that kind of church search stage. Because if you end up in a place like Durham, there are kind of 6 churches that the CU would endorse, the Christian Union would get behind, and so that actually means you kind of almost got too much choice. But I think have a think. What is it that I want in a church? And I think like some key things are like that you're going to be taught about God from His Word, that you're going to be in community with other people who believe in Him, that you're going to have an opportunity to serve, and it might actually just be that there are multiple churches that do all those things, and I think in that case just pick one and kind of go all out for it. Kind of, I think similar to like with your sport, really be committed to, like with sport, you'd be committed to training, you'd be committed to match days. With church, be committed to getting there on a Sunday, getting there to midweek groups if you can, and also like meeting up one-to-one with people. I think that's really helpful to feel like you're part of something. when it comes to a church. Yeah.
Great. So it's not all about who offers the best free lunch.
Yeah, not all about that. Although that's
Yeah,
that's
it's
a
nice.
factor.
It is nice. It is nice. Okay, so you got involved in sport. You navigated the first couple of weeks. You got involved in a few societies and nailed down on your church. You've both then mentioned that you've been involved in the Christians in Sport group. Across the UK, Christians in Sport will have university groups. We've got them across most unis. We're hoping to grow that as much as we can. And they're there to encourage and support Christians to pray together for their sports clubs and those they train and compete alongside, as well as then equip the Christian sports people to go and live out and speak out their faith. Both of you are involved. Both of you actually have led groups over the time at your universities. But how were those early stages of being involved in the CIS group? How did that encourage you and equip you really to live and speak for Jesus in sport? Joe, let's go back to you. Durham, what was it like?
Yeah, it was brilliant. Like I think the Christians in Sport group over my 4 years in Durham just had one of the biggest effects, I think, on my Christian life. Like being able to meet other people who are mad about sport and really like on fire for Jesus was just class. And I think two things in particular. One, that I could really do my sport in a way that pleased God, pleased Jesus, was something that I basically learned for the first time, aged 18, going along to Christians in Sport group meetings, and also that there's just a massive amount of people who don't know Jesus and won't hear about him unless something changes, unless there are Christians in their sports clubs who are going to kind of stick their neck out on the line. And I think, it was those two realizations have kind of just changed the way that I've thought about my sport ever since. It was really, really helpful.
Great. Bree, what was your experience like?
Yeah, like Joe, it was amazing. I think for me, because I wasn't part of CU, Christian Union, in the first year, that was my first sort of bit of community where I had Christians that loved Jesus so much, but also loved sport. And there was only me and someone else from my university. That was because we were joint with Cardiff University, so our Christian sport group was actually combined. But even so, I knew waking up at 7 a.m, walking down, that was just the highlight of my week. To meet with those guys, to have breakfast, to just spend time in God's word, and then how can I apply that within my sport. And it was like Joe, the first time when I realized, I was like, oh yeah, I can glorify God in how I train, in how I compete, and I can show people Jesus in this. And my eyes were opened. I hadn't thought of that before. And so wow, it was just so amazing and so important for my faith, I think, in my first year especially. It just gave me something that was always there on a Wednesday, always encouragement, so much support. It was really great.
Okay, so you've got a fresher who's about to go to university, mad about their sport, committed to following Jesus, and you can give them one piece of advice. What would you say? Ree, go first.
Get involved with your sport, and I think invite one of your teammates or a couple of them round to your flat for dinner would be my top tip, because you're just building community straight away, showing them the love of Jesus within those first few weeks.
Very good, nice. Joe, what would you say?
Oh yeah, that was a good one, Ree. I think definitely do what Ree said, and then similarly get stuck in with a church in particular. It's going to be a place that's going to support you, eventually feel more like home, and alongside your sport will be a place where you can also bring teammates for them to hear the gospel and to experience a totally different kind of community that's just class. So yeah, get stuck in with a church, I think is what I'd say.
Fantastic. If you are listening into this and you're about to go to university, then we would love to connect you with the Christensen Sport Group at your uni, if there is one, or to at least other Christian sports people we know. On the Christian Sport website, there's a form that you can fill up, which says go in to university, and then just fill in your details, and we would love to get in touch with you. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing your experiences. That's been so encouraging to hear and helpful as well with some of the advice. Again, there is more if you want to think more specifically about the socials scene that you might be facing. There's resources on the Christensen Sport website that just help you think a little bit more about what it means to stand tall for Jesus there. And then we'll also be releasing our 6 top tips for going to university as a Christian sports person. So keep an eye out on that. Jump on the Christensen Sport website or on the social media streams, and you'll be able to stay up to date with some of the stuff that we'll be releasing over the coming months. Thank you so much. See you soon.